Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Student Agencies podcast. Today we're joined by CJ Rhan, a Dyson graduate, former general manager of Hired Hands, and now a technology consultant at PwC. At Cornell, CJ developed an interest in how data and digital tools can improve organizational decision making, which came to life during his GM year at Hired Hands, where he led large teams and modernized operations at scale. Today at PwC, he brings that same operational mindset to large financial systems implementations, supporting complex projects where coordination and precision matter. We're excited to explore how these experiences connect and how student agencies continues to shape his professional path. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
To jump right in, or before we jump right in, what would you say was the first thing you feel when you think back to your time at 409 at student agencies?
Yeah, I think immediately just brings back sort of a sense of fun and excitement. I think the space there, just with kind of a young group of people who are all just excited to be there doing something new. I think it's definitely a great atmosphere that brings back good memories.
Yeah, for sure. And so kind of moving into um, your time at student agencies itself, running a moving company isn't like running any typical student business, especially at such a young age. You have people, different clients constantly relocating homes, offices, entire chapters of their lives, right? So when did you first feel the weight of that responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you feel it definitely on your first move, right? The first move that you're managing, it's like, all right, we have to take this person, maybe from Ithaca to another upstate New York place. You feel it, you feel that, when you're signing the contract for the truck, all of that stuff builds up to it. But I think you really feel it the first time something doesn't go necessarily right. When you feel the impact of, you know, maybe you had to delay a move because the truck wasn't ready, and now that person maybe has to pay some fees because they're going to be late moving out of their apartment, or something on the move doesn't go right, and maybe something gets broken, and now somebody's sentimental family heirloom is a piece of trash on the ground, and you really feel sort of the impact that what you're doing has, right? These people are trusting you to move their lives, everything that they own, from, where they are now to, their new home, their new life that they're starting on. So it's definitely a big task to take on. And like you said, at a young age, definitely kind of instilled a level of responsibility that I hadn't felt previously.
And what was like, how did that come to life, and how does that continue to play out in your life now and in your career?
Yeah, so I think that just making sure that everything is as perfect as you can be. In the moving company, like I said, one thing goes wrong, one small mistake that you make can have a huge impact. Like I said, these people are, one, kind of in a vulnerable spot in their life, right? Moving is often a stressful time for a lot of people, maybe starting a new job, moving in with a significant other. It's definitely a lot of changing for them. So I think that a lot of the times it was just making sure that as much preparation that we can do ahead of time sets us up for success, and then obviously a successful move is a good job at the end of the day.
So why did you pick working in student agencies among all the, things? There's a million things you can do at Cornell: studies, research, clubs, Greek life, etc. Why did you pick working at student agencies?
Yeah, so I actually started at student agencies as a mover, as a worker for hired hands. So the manager before me, I think you guys actually spoke to him, Lucas, was actually one of my friends freshman year, and just needed extra hands moving, and I was a freshman at school looking for things to get involved in and could use some extra money, so got involved as a mover, and then obviously talking with Lucas, we were good friends. Said, hey, this is a really good opportunity. This is currently what I'm doing. I'm getting a lot of good experience. So he was kind of the one that gave me this idea, or kind of pushed me towards the direction of joining student agencies. And then once I heard about it, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to be that young, to get that level of responsibility and control. I just thought it was an opportunity I couldn't look past.
For sure, yeah, I totally agree with the points, and I think, yeah, to speak to what you're talking about, I think the environment that you're set up in at agencies is so unique, and I think it prepares you so well, for your career. And kind of touching on that, what would you say are the biggest things you've kind of learned or kind of taken towards your career and at PwC and kind of moving forward?
Yeah, so I definitely think the time management aspect probably one of the most challenging things about the job, but also one of the most rewarding things. As students, you're taking on this commitment that's, 20, 25 hours a week on top of an already obviously stressful Cornell educational environment. And so just being able to prioritize and time box yourself in a way that obviously you still want to make sure that you're doing your best as a student, but also making sure that you're able to do your job here as student agencies and making sure that you're pushing the business forward in whichever way that you can. Being able to make sure that, like you said, if I had a big study event or a big test that I need to do, I'd make sure that, in coordination with your different managers, your co-managers, that you guys kind of share the workload and are able to time box accordingly.
So I'm going to ask you to think of a story, and I'd love for you to think of a story that you lived while at student agencies. Could be while you were GM, could be while you were in the ramp up to become GM, that you then relayed and used in your interview process to get into PwC or during other interviews that you had. Like, what were the set of things, the set of activities, and what was that actual story that was the one where people kind of on the other side of the table leaned in and were like, "Ooh, tell me more."
Yeah, so I think that, one of the unique things about especially hired hands is that the peak kind of is perfect for the yearly cycle that we have because the peak is over the summer, right? That's when most of the people are moving. So you kind of get this big spring, fall season to kind of get your hands kind of dirty and kind of understand the process. And the summer is when you're kind of full speed ahead, no school, and kind of are able to run the business fully 40 hours a week. And so one of the stories that I told was over the summer, we had a major project with the Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Association. And we did, I think, our biggest day was one of the later days in June, and we did over 30 moves in one day. And that was from coordinating the moving trucks, all of the staffing, all the different locations, and just explaining all the logistics that go into that. I think was one of the things that, when I can speak to this during interviews, people on the other side of the table say, you can't fake that, right? 30 moves in one day, whether it's two houses down the block or whether it's all the way across town is an impressive feat. So I think that's
Sweet.
the
Can you
story.
can you tell us about that? Because that's actually not only is that interesting for us because we continue to run the business today,
Yeah.
but I think that's really interesting for future students, future, SAI alums to hear about because it really gives you a sense of how complex and how challenging it can be, and then also what the learning opportunities. Tell us more.
Yeah. So like I said, it was one of the days, it was probably a weekend at the end of June, and it was just a day that lined up where we had a lot of external clients. So this Ithaca neighborhood housing was a repeat job that we had where we were moving people. They were doing a lot of renovations in the units that they had. So we were moving people from out of their house that they were living into sort of a temporary house while they did the renovations, and then we would move them back. And so I think we had about 15 or around half of the jobs were, just doing that, moving people from back to back. And then the rest were just clients that we had picked up, for summer moves. And so the first thing you think of is, oh, wow, we have 30 jobs to do. How are we going to get? You at least need two people to be able to carry each thing for a job. That's 60 people. And so that was our first task, was just get the labor force around it. And so we really kind of prepped up. We talked to the people from the SAI, and we had some people just fill in that were just managers or employees of other jobs. We kind of used all of our network in order to make sure that we could staff it all. And so we were able to do that. And then the next part is, all right, well, now we need moving trucks. Things aren't going to move themselves. So the logistical piece is working with the different local renting companies. We reached out. We had to drive a little bit further than we'd like to get some of the moving trucks, but we just wanted to make sure that we had everything that we needed in order to get that day accomplished. And I think at the end of the day, that was probably one of the tiredest days that we had. All the general managers, all the assistant managers were in the field that day just to make sure everything went well. But I think at the end of the day, it was a job all done, and we definitely celebrated that night.
So what was the big takeaway? I think you said it probably at the beginning. It's like get prepared, get your ducks in a row, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. The more preparation you do ahead of the time, the less scrambling, the less urgency is going to be on the day. So,
And how have these lessons carried forward? You're in technology and digital consulting, I see at PwC.
mhm.
Clearly not, a physical labor logistics kind of job, but like what are the principles that carry over into consulting at a big four?
Yeah, I think those exact same principles still apply. Well, in my technology role, I'm not moving physical boxes or, moving physical, washing machines and things like that. You still have to make sure that you're prepared in the same way. So, what I do at work is we do financial system implementation. So, we're taking a client from their old system and moving them into a new system. So, we want to make sure that everything's prepared. And I think that one of the things that I've taken from student agencies and hired hands specifically is just kind of the calm under pressure. So when we go live, right, we're sending a lot of users into this system. A lot of them using it for the first time, and things are going to go wrong. Things aren't going to work. Connections aren't going to work. They're not going to be able to do everything that they can. And the same principle applies at hired hands. Like I said, when things went wrong, it was a matter of how can we stay calm and just be, direct oriented and making sure that we completed our objective and kind of laid the steps out to be prepared in order to do that.
What are your keys for staying calm?
Yeah, I just think that compartmentalizing everything is really what I like to do. I think that a lot of times you get these big problems and a lot of people sort of get overwhelmed at, all right, how am I going to solve all of this at once? You really just have to prioritize, right? What can I do now and what's going to be most important and break that problem down into smaller, more manageable problems. And then you can find solutions to those. That's how I work.
Nice.
Do you have a story from PwC or work beyond Cornell where, something didn't go as, planned and you had to draw on those skills that you're mentioning and staying calm and kind of, you know, pushing forward?
Yeah. So, like I said, during our big go lives, which is basically when we released the system to the users, it was one of my first early projects at PwC, and we had done everything that we thought we needed to do, prepared everything, tested everything twice, and on the day when we released the system to the users, there was a key functionality, invoicing. Right, you need to be able to pay people for their services. The payments weren't going through, and obviously that's a big issue, but I think that similar kind of problem solving is, I'm not going to be able to fix this problem in an hour, maybe not in a day, but what can I do now? What can we do to sort of alleviate the problem? And so we did the necessary steps. We said, okay, how can we first get these payments out? Can they make them in physical checks? Are there other alternatives that they can use in order to get the payments out? And then step by step, we were able to solve the problem. And within the first 2 days or so, we were able to get the system up and running for them.
Very cool. So I'm curious, what would you say to an incoming freshman or a rising sophomore or even a rising junior? Why should they consider SAI? Like, what are they going to get out of it? What's the value prop? What did you get out of it? Why is it worth, the struggle, the sweat, etc.?
Yeah. So I think that the first thing is that, like I said, this is a unique experience that you're not going to get anywhere else. And while it is a struggle, like you said, and while it is a sweat, it is probably one of the most fun, enjoyable experiences I had at Cornell. And I think that the level of, like you said, management experience, time management experience, dealing with leadership. When I joined at PwC, I was probably one of the only people in my peers that, has gone to a board of directors and spoke at a board meeting, right? That's one of the unique opportunities that you're not going to get in a club on campus. You're not going to get in a classroom. These are real life business experience that, again, once in a lifetime opportunity.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Any other closing thoughts or stories that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say probably one of the other biggest things that we did at Cornell was our big move for Tompkins Trust. So while we were there at Cornell and Ithaca, Tompkins had around seven or so different locations, and they all consolidated into probably where the location is now down in the center of Ithaca. And that was, again, a massive, massive undertaking logistically, making sure that we had all the staff to get all of those different locations moved into the central location, as well as the client relationship. Because I think one of the opportunities that we saw with hired hands was obviously moving people from house to house is a great revenue stream, but being able to do these big commercial moves, and this was one of the first ones that we did. And so I think just having that experience and dealing with a commercial client, dealing with, in Tompkins and Ithaca, in the Ithaca community, such a big client, was definitely something that I obviously leveraged going forward in PwC.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds like a really challenging undertaking. Actually, like Tompkins is in the center of Ithaca still, and their offices are pretty massive. So I imagine that was a dozen or more folks working on that move with several trucks.
Yes.
Lots of
Yep.
coordination to do.
Yep. No, exactly. A lot of coordination, a lot of logistics, and like I said, preparation was key at the end of the day.
Well, CJ, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. I really appreciate you guys chatting with me.